All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Muscle podcast. Today, I'm joined by Steve Keane. Steve, hello, how you doing?
Hello, guys. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, very well, mate. For those listening, we've had a good chat off air. We've got a few things off our chest, but we're ready to rumble now. Now, Steve, I became aware of Steve via Instagram, which we were discussing off air, and I think Steve, he obviously thinks deeply about the fitness industry, but also how he's working with clients, how he can impact people, and really caught my attention. And almost like I think of you as a bit of a fitness philosopher, Steve. So we'll explore some of that, but also you've had a little pivot in your career and the people you work with, and that's what I really want to explore. But
Yeah.
before I sort of funnel us down where I want to go, could you tell us a little bit more about you and how you got into fitness, training yourself, training other people?
Yeah, so I think I went the path of most people. I used to play a lot of football. So I was playing like a semi-professional level, realised that wasn't really something I wanted to do long term. Then started to look into other careers, went down a couple of pathways that were like not really for me, like working at a train station in a uniform that was a couple of sizes too big for me. Then realised I should probably have a look at doing something with the actual qualification I've got in personal training. Entered into just a standard kind of leisure centre gym. And then from there, I think you first off dive into that world and you're doing the standard things that most people do, where you're doing like boxing lessons, even though you're not a boxer.
Yes.
Anything you can do to try and gain traction with clients and hold on to them. And you kind of listening to the other PTs around you. And after a little while, I started to think that, well, I was quite fortunate because my entry into fitness, I was exposed to Brad Schoenfeld, Eric Helms, people like that from quite an early age. And the general kind of education level is quite high there. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't understand half of what they were saying. But I think with that kind of backing, my PT business grew quite quickly. And then you almost get to a point where you start to look a little bit above that. And you're like, all right, who are we going to move on to? And then kind of delved into a little bit more of the bodybuilding route. And yeah, and then I think we stuck around there for probably a good 3 or 4 years, kind of focusing a little bit more heavily on physique development. Mm-hmm. And then over the last, like we were just talking about off air, over the last 6 months or so, it's kind of gone full circle back around into general gym population clients. Maybe are in a little bit more on the physique development world, but I get a real sense of purpose from doing that. There's something a little bit more rewarding about that whole thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And as a post you maybe made 2 weeks ago, you referenced the train, working at the train station and that experience. I wasn't aware of that until I saw that post. That bodybuilding thing, I think you're right. Like when I set out as a PT, what you then, back then I suppose the trend was, I want to work with elite athletes. And then that's pivoted and shifted. And I think now comp prep is something that like a lot of people think, I want to do that. I want to get guys and girls shredded for stage and that whole thing. Now, if we're honest, there's only so many people who are prepared to do what it takes to get into that condition, and there only so many of them are hiring coaches. So it's a relatively small marketplace in the grand scheme of things. And perhaps, as you said, maybe more fulfilling to help someone who struggles more with this, but still has many similar ideals, but just to maybe a lower magnitude. They still want to build muscle and lose fat. So the overall, if you're looking from 1,000-mile view, the goal's the same. But if you laser in, they're not looking to get into some budgie smugglers and cover themselves in Nutella to step on stage.
100%. I think there's an element of it as well that you're working with people that obviously they want to get bigger biceps, they want to get bigger quads, and you're looking at them and the interaction you're having with them, you're kind of picking up that you understand that they're not going to be happy once they get there anyway. And fundamentally, the purpose of our job is to make people healthy and happy. And I think the happiness side of it's kind of missed off a lot, and sometimes the health side of it's missed off a little bit as well, and it becomes much more visual than anything else. So as people are coming and they're saying, well, I want to get my arms to this size and then I think I'm going to feel content, I'm sitting on the other side thinking, I don't think you're going to feel content when you get there, but they don't want to hear that side of you. So you almost feel like you're holding a little bit back from what you're actually trying to impart on them. Mm-hmm. Then from there, there's that natural transition back into, well, I'm helping this person over here that maybe wants to lose 5-10 pounds, and they're so happy that they're managing to do it. whilst they're managing to manage their life, whilst they're managing to also train and feel stronger. And you're just getting a lot more reward from it. It really changes your perspective on what's kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. I mean, in my coaching career, I've prepped people for 6 different shows.
Okay.
But I've worked with, like, I don't know, by many factors of that, people just getting in better shape. Whether that be, I've got clients who are in their 70s who they're just pleased because they're stronger now than they were when they're 40, to someone who, like, genuinely probably could have stepped on stage, but they just had a photo shoot, and, like, there's that whole range. But you're right, there does seem to be something about the reward and the change in them, and I think maybe it's more marked because they haven't been associated with, I'm a successful and like everyone knows I go to the gym. So, like, if you're a bodybuilder and you're going to compete, people can see that you're in great shape, and then you just get insanely shredded. Whereas if you're someone who's kind of out of shape, you've never had that kudos, like, swagger maybe, and then the transformation when they're like, you know what, if I control these variables, I can actually control how I look, and the way that makes me feel is quite transformative. And then the confidence, and that's one of the great, really rewarding things, is helping someone like that, and not just seeing the physical change, but the mental change. And I'm sure you've seen that yourself.
100%. I mean, there's also, like, when you went to the bodybuilding shows, how did you actually find it? What did you what kind of sense did you get from it?
It's not the sort of place I particularly enjoy being. But again, we talked off air, but, like, I'm relatively shy. I don't really want to be in front of people particularly. I don't definitely want to be in front of a centre of attention. So I once actually did a show because I bet, like, someone said you've got to do it. So I did it, and it was like, I suppose it sets up me thinking I hated it. I found the couple of minutes I was on stage surprisingly good, but the whole build up was horrific. So it's just the anxiety, and I suppose that's someone who's, like, anxious about things. That's it. So once you got into it, it's a bit like playing. I used to play rugby, and I'd be incredibly anxious before the game. As soon as you start, it was fine, and I found that with the bodybuilding. But being at the show, I'm not particularly. I would not think I'm particularly sort of visually or aesthetically oriented in terms of, I like that, don't worry about, well, I haven't got any hair, so I can't worry about my hair, but my physical appearance. Yeah, exactly. My physical appearance isn't something that I'm so heavily invested in, I suppose. And it does just come across as like this glorified beauty pageant where people are very, very self-obsessed and selfish. And that is unfair when you get behind the stage, because actually I found that at the natural, well, I've only really done anything for natural shows, I don't know for the higher level drug, but there is a real sense of camaraderie and people helping behind the scenes. But watching the show, I found quite an unpleasant experience, if I'm honest. Like, just
100% agree, and I agree as well. I think the people that are actually involved in the show, I think they're some of the nicest people going. I don't think it's like bad in bodybuilding or anything like that, but it seems like everyone's chasing something that they're never really fully happy with. They're always kind of like chasing something down, chasing the next show, chasing the meals after the show, and it never seems.
Racing for the donuts or whatever. So
it always seemed like it was lacking some sense of purpose. And then, like we said, transitioning across, when you start to help people that have never been able to go out to eat dinner without feeling guilt, or people that have never been able to lose weight before without completely removing all carbs from their diet, or jumping onto some sort of like meal replacement shakes or something else, or just enjoying social situations while they are. The difference in the level of the feel-good factor, which again, it might be actually a selfish thing on my part. I might be doing it for, self-obsessed reasons, but the difference in the enjoyment factor is just staggering.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you're right. There's definitely, I get a lot from it, and as you said, you do when you help someone, and to some extent that's selfish. But I suppose it's you lift them up, they lift you up type scenario, and it's a positive, like a synergistic effect. And then there's nothing like seeing that. There's sort of just, and it benefits all your other clients, because when you're absolutely buzzing, you're on fire because, like, this guy's, I'm so motivated from seeing, and I want to share that with more people. So I think it's definitely a positive upward spiral in that respect. So when we look at this though, like, as I said, like, from a wider view, a lot of the goals are very similar. Now you've changed from wanting to work with bodybuilders and now more sort of regular people who want to look better naked, but So what have you found in number one in terms of the clients? Maybe how are they different? But then also, what do you do differently? Is it that you know, same principles, your expectations are just changed a little bit about their commitment, etc.? What are the major differences?
So I think on all areas things kind of change a little bit, and it's more so that maybe if we look at training someone for a physique show or something like that, the most important things might be physical, what we push them in terms of training, and how we push them in terms of nutrition. And psychological kind of comes in a distant third. It's there, but it's not really important. Whereas when you switch over to a bit more general gym population, I would say training almost takes third position, and nutrition and psychological almost take near joint first, but psychological is probably, so basically the whole order of everything gets flipped up slightly. Now, it's not to say training isn't important, but when you're taking someone that isn't already ticking nearly all boxes, we don't need to press on them that we need to be doing this many working sets and making sure we finish this many workouts in a week to be making sure that we make this little marginal bit of progress. Because now someone's entering into the gym and they're training 4 full body sessions or an upper lower session, and they're already making a profound difference compared to where they were. The same with nutrition. It becomes less of a worry, of a concern that they're not going to be ready in time, or they're not going to grow the muscle that they want if they're missing the weekends because they're having a couple of drinks with their friends or whatever else. And if anything, we start to look at people's true underlying values. And if they are someone that says to us that I want to come into this service because I want to find a more happy, content place, then, and part of that pathway might be that they want to lose, let's say, 10 pounds. So as they go through the process, they could be dieting all through the week, and then the weekend might come up and they might sacrifice the diet to go enjoy a social situation with their friends. Well, we have a question to ask them, which is, your value was that you wanted to come in and be happy. So in that situation, are you still adhering to your values? Are you still making yourself happier? And they might be like, yeah, I actually had a really, really good time. I enjoyed it. Be like, perfect. Let's jump straight back on diet then. Let's not concern ourselves too much with whatever else being off track for a day or two. So just the outlook that you end up giving to your clients and the things that you press that are important, it switches over a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's that phrase, sort of training should improve your life, not rule your life. Certainly for general pop, that's the reality is, if you're going to step on stage for a period of time, it is going to rule your life, because you can't help but become hyper focused to achieve the outcome you want. It's what's necessary. There's only probably very few genetically blessed people who wouldn't need it to be that case. So for the vast majority of people, but I don't think there's any problem with that, as long as the person, as you say, it's happiness. If they actually find that fulfilling and that's what they want, and it doesn't detract from their life bigger picture, have at it. Absolutely. Some of the guys that I prepped, it was a brilliant experience for them. So that's great. I think one of the problems is that you see it on social media now, is like everyone looks like a competitive athlete, a competitive physique athlete. So you're like, well, I have to do that to be, for validation, to feel self-worth. Is that something that spills over? Does that creep in even with the people you work with who we're classing as like your regular people? Does that still filter into their world?
What is in them wanting to look like a certain person online or look in a certain shape?
Yeah, feeling like, okay, this would almost like to make it to some extent, it's like, this would make me a better person. If I would look like this, I would be happier and a better individual.
I think it does for everyone. I think anyone that says they don't quantify some sort of their own internal worth based on how they visually appear, it would be a little bit of a lie. Like, we don't wake up in the morning and just leave the house without looking in the mirror. We don't not enjoy going shopping unless you go with your girlfriend and she makes you stand in the queue for a long time. But we enjoy these things. We enjoy online shopping. We enjoy going to the barbers and getting a haircut. We enjoy all these things that make us visually more appealing. And I suppose growing muscle and that kind of thing is a facet of that. But I think where you almost... it's everything to people to do bodybuilding and physique shows. It becomes everything. And with people that are general gym population, it can become a little bit more, but they have other variables that they've got to consider, like social situations, like making sure that their other halves are happy, like making sure that they spend time with their kids, like making sure that they do their work, like, and yeah, bodybuilders and stuff like that do also have to do this, but their priorities are slightly switched over. So even though general gym population people, they do still suffer with it, I think it's almost easier to kind of start to transition them away from it slowly. Whereas with a bodybuilder or a physique competitor, or someone that's very heavily involved in that world, they almost see it like you're taking them away from your goals if you do start to try and transition them away from it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one because they're kind of prepared. The competitor, at least they're aware of what goes into it. And I find sometimes people, if you're in an industry, then you forget what other people that aren't in the industry don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you think, well, it's obvious that they know that person A is using lots of drugs or is training X amount of times a week and is genetically gifted, blah blah blah. And they come in and just go like, well, that guy looks pretty good, and I fancy looking like him in 12 weeks.
Yeah, there is a big bit of that, like, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it as well, but when you try and tell a Gen Pop person at the beginning that that person's probably on drugs, it does kind of come across a little bit hatey from you, and you're like, oh, look, I'm not saying this because like I'm trying to say that we can't achieve that, like we can't achieve that for one, but it's more to give you a realistic perspective. And they kind of look at you like, I don't know, I'm not too sure about that. But then I find that same thing. I definitely found that same thing heavily with people that were very invested in the physique world. I find that training education in that world isn't necessarily crazily higher than the general gym population world. I find that it's usually more genetics are a little bit higher. So they've kind of got away with a lot of things for a large amount of time. And I don't know whether that gives you a better or a worse perspective, because now you're almost in a position that you believe what you've been doing is right because you've got results from it. Whereas the other people kind of come at it with a little bit less of a skeptical mind because they're like, well, what I've been doing has not been working, so surely I'm going to be open to whatever you're selling.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make, actually. Yeah, a lot of people with great physiques, they do it in spite of their training in some respects. And so, and well, you know, like, what's the quote I loved, I heard the other day was, the people that write the instruction manual should be the people that struggle to build the product. And I think, people that have struggled to get in shape, they've had to think it through deeply. They've had to learn all the elements of what goes into it. Someone who just looked at a dumbbell and grew, they've never had to give that thought process. And fair enough, why would you? I mean, if I could play football like Messi just without practicing, well, I wouldn't practice. But I definitely can't. But yes, it's the sort of same thing with this. So I think there's definitely a lot to be said for that, and then them being a bit more stubborn.
Well, that's also a thing that's crept into the PT world in general, isn't it? You find that a lot of the time that people that have had great genetics and that have great results, they're usually obviously we're very generalizing here, but a lot of the times they're going to be lower on the training education side of things, mostly because why have they ever had to? They don't need to go get educated. They've just assumed, well, what they do works. And obviously a lot of our beliefs are going to come from what we've done when we're younger. So if we've done stuff, we've walked into it, we've gone, this works brilliantly. Now we think that everyone else fits into that bracket of, well, this should work quite well for them. And obviously we know that isn't to be true. Whereas people into it slightly worse genetics are almost got a little bit of a better standing because they straight away dive into, well, let's figure out how to make this work.
Yes, yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And yeah, there's lots of coaches out there who are in great shape and they just prescribe their same training methodology, to their clients. And then I suppose if you train enough people, some of the time it will work. And because there will be some other gifted people out there. So that is absolutely a thing. It's a real shame because as a consumer though, looking in, you're like, well, that guy's in shape. And that's a big bit of social proof, isn't it? So if they also happen to post lots of shirtless selfies and have a big Instagram following, that's another bit of social proof. So I'll go with them. So I don't blame the person who again goes there, and we've got, as an industry, need to do a better job of helping people to have a filter. I mean, we know enough about it. We can filter through and go, oh, you know what? a lot of this information this person's saying is rubbish, or this person's brilliant. There's a load of value here, and everything in between. But it's taken years of experience to have that filter. You can't expect someone to come in, as just I just want to get in shape and I know nothing about this to have that understanding.
Yeah, I think, and you raise a great point about like we have to kind of bring up that education as an industry, because I think a lot of the time we spend a lot of time almost moaning about it a little bit too much, but that doesn't do anything to help them out. If anything, it just polarizes people, and people go either in this camp or this camp, and there's not really a camp. It's just bringing up the whole education of the training industry in general. And I don't know if you found this, but I've definitely found in the last, I would probably say 4 to 5 years, the education in the PT industry has risen like tremendously. I remember when I just started up, so I've been PTing now for the last, I think it's about 7 years. And I remember to start PTing, talking to people about calories was like a foreign concept. You didn't go on, you didn't talk about those things, and talk about macros and stuff like that. But now it's general information. Like you talk to a 70-year-old on the treadmill, and they're aware of what calories are, and you're like, cool, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I think on average within the industry it's increased and around, and then I suppose the only concern is that because the people that shout the loudest get heard, sometimes those people that actually don't warrant that attention are getting it, and I suppose finding a way to sort of a gatekeeper to quality information and that filter is a key point. But now, if you know where to look, I mean, there's everything you could want to know is almost available online. You can do really good qualifications and courses or seminars, webinars with people remotely. Those offerings have stepped up as well. Before, quite often you'd have to be there in person. Now people are finding a way to deliver good quality educational information, via everyone's Zoom or whatever. So,
well, I went through about 2 years ago now, or last year, one of them two, but the RP Renaissance periodization, their programming presentations. I just sat down and went through them. I think there was about 25 of them on there, which are all about an hour long. And the level of education in that, which costs, I think it's £7 a month, the level of education that's presented to you in there by like Mike Israetel is ridiculous. Like the fact that you can get that for £7, which is, I see a lot of people commenting on it saying this is better than my like uni degree that I went and sat. And you're like, you paid like $9,000 or however much for that. So it's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can second that. I've did a sports science and a coaching degree, and then a master's in strength and conditioning, and undoubtedly there was plenty of value there, but it cost me a lot to do that. And then the quality of information that some people are putting out there, you've mentioned like Mike Israetel, Schoenfeld, and Eric Helms, who's been on the show, like really doing a great job of actually getting quality information out there that is accessible. So, I mean, essentially all you need is a smartphone, nowadays, and you can sort of tap into some of the brightest minds in the world, which is a huge advantage. The only thing that is scary is you can also tap on, a random YouTube video where someone convinces that if you set foot on a treadmill, you're going to, gain loads of fat and lose all your strength. So.
Well, I've found that with it used to be called like the bro side of the industry, but obviously that side of the industry now seems like it's got a foot in a lot more in some almost kind of concepts that should maybe there's something in the world. There might not be, but they sound so legitimate that they sound very, very convincing. And it seems like as the kind of evidence-based sides come up, the kind of bro sides come up a little bit as well. So there's still people that fall into either trap, definitely.
Yeah, but I think the good thing now, there's people that traverse both, and they sort of dip a toe in each, and they bring it together, and then they make you aware of this person over there who has something useful, and that person over there also, and then rather than it being two warring camps, they start to see more common ground, and I think that's definitely something that's happened.
Yeah, it's something that needs to take place. There doesn't need to be like opposing camps. It just needs to be like a general kind of fitness industry as a whole. Like at the end of the day, most people are arguing over which is going to get you marginally more gains on your training split or progression scheme. And it just doesn't matter to 99% of people.
It's fun for me and you to sort of read and theorize and geek out on, but for the average person, not that important. It's just getting back to the average person, So let's think how well. Like, so your typical client, how often are they training per week?
So would it be in person or
Well,
online?
let's do both. Let's do both. So if we go in
Okay.
person first.
In person, most of my clients are 3 to 4 sessions a week. Now, these are generally people that we build them up to a level that they can go train on their own. They're never meant to be tied for you for a long time anyway. So I think the job of a PT is to bring people's education level up to a level that they can kind of roll on their own. Now, if they choose to stay with you, then that's fine. You can't exactly kick them out. You're not looking. But you just want to put them in a position that if they have to at any stage, they can go and they'll be absolutely fine. And then my people online, typically somewhere around about 4 to 5 times a week, they'll be training.
So would you say that the person you work with online is more likely to be take things to a bit more seriously or to a higher level, or be more inclined to be someone who may eventually drift towards physique competition, and the in-person one is someone who, well, they're number one, they're probably local to you, so that's a big factor, and they've heard good things, but they're only going to travel so far, so their aspirations are still fairly distinct from your online client.
Yeah, well, where we've so I've just recently launched a company called Kraft Coaching with business partner Ben and Rachel, business partners, and all three of us have said like our general kind of clientele that we want to be aiming for is general gym population, maybe a little bit higher upscale, but general gym population is where we like really find an interest. And now that we've gone down that route, I still personally have people that come in that are a little bit more physique development, but I kind of make them aware. Like I've had a couple of people ask me the contest prep, and I've just said, look, I wouldn't do the best job by you. You'd probably be better off going with someone else. But people that are heavily investing in growing muscle, we still get them coming in. And that's absolutely fine. Just I kind of say to them, if you're looking to compete or anything like that, you're probably better off going with another person. But I would say that route, because they become a lot more self-sufficient quickly, I don't know whether it's this part I suppose as humans, we're always looking for some sort of progress in something. And after a while in the gym, we realized that it's the instant gratification effect wears off, and it becomes a lot more delayed gratification. And people are always kind of searching out new goals. So sometimes that will be, do you know what, I've seen these physique competitions, I might give this a go. I typically try to talk to people before they go into that, because I'm like, this might not exactly be what you think it's going to be, but you might find more enjoyment in like picking up a strongman event or picking up some sort of like race event or something like that that's a little bit easier to get in, get out. But yeah, it does happen. People do still look to change over, but I'd say it's definitely transitioning away now. It's going a little bit more just kind of general gym pop, staying within that physique development and then looking to build up on other areas.
Okay, so just while we're sort of exploring that a little bit, would you say there's more diversity in your like in-person client in terms of like demographics or whatever, like in terms of age range that you work with, work experience, etc., all these different components, and is it a tighter band or a more similar cohort of people that you work with online?
Well, actually, there's a very interesting story here with my in-person clients. For the last however long it's been, like before lockdown, obviously, and just after lockdown now, and a little in-between stage, I've just trained one family, family and a boyfriend. So that works out between them. And I have 2 other clients in the gym as well. So between them, that's 7 clients. There's 6 in the family, 1 boyfriend, and then 2. And I'm laughing about it as well, because I'm like, well, diversity, not so much. It's pretty much. But before that, I'd say the diversity, because when people come to you in person, they're generally going to be people that maybe have a lower training education. So they're going to be more your people that may just come into the gym and have a chat with you. They might not even know who you are. Now, typically, I get most people that come to me online through social media. So I think they've been following you for a little while. They're a little bit more invested in you. And I do get some one-to-one clients that come in through there, but generally don't have space for it. But I think that will be the difference maker a lot of the time. My people that kind of come to me online will typically be between, let's say, 20 to 35, 40 maybe. Generally, male or female, it's not really one or the other. Whereas in the gym, you might start talking to randomly your 50, 60-year-olds, just be having a conversation. They ask if you've got any space, and it happens to be that you've got a couple of slots, and you talk to them from there. So yeah, the diversity is definitely higher in person than it is online, I'd say.
Except for when you're just training the same family.
Same family, and then we'll forget about that.
That's the first person who's ever had that, but
I saw your face go, that's a bad question.
Yeah, that hasn't played out how I was expecting. Well, that's fine. Like, the goal isn't for you to answer the questions in the way I expect them to be. But yeah, certainly was unexpected. That's
well, I was expecting.
Nailed it. Like, yeah, so they're all in the same household. No, nicely done. That is cool. Well, how did you? I suppose there's a story there. So how did you at first just train one of them, and it was like referrals within the family? How did that play out?
Yeah, so I trained the boyfriend. He was a referral to me from someone else. And then from there, the boyfriend's girlfriend started training with me. And then from there, the girlfriend's I can't remember who it was from the family first, but I think they were looking to move away from someone else. And then I started talking to them because I was there with the girlfriend. And then, yeah, it all just kind of spiraled from there. And then before you know, it's like a domino effect. And everyone's like, you've got space to fit me in as well. And you've trained 7 people.
Well, I mean, basically, there's a lot riding on the boyfriend, though, isn't it? Like here, he's
break up.
Exactly. Can't mess this up for you. Like, no pressure.
Every time there's a relationship issue, I'm straight there. I'm like, come on, guys.
So, relationship counselling is actually your job. Yeah. Excellent. No, but I know what you mean. I've never had the thing. I mean, I've trained lots of couples, as in I've trained one, and then they've said, could train my husband or wife, for example. I suppose the closest I had once, there's an investment bank in London, and I basically ended up training the entire Russian desk at that because I trained one, and then there was 7 guys, and it was all like, and that way. So it does kind of, but when you're in person, word of mouth is the best kind of marketing you can have, right? So it does, if you're doing a good job, quite often it falls that way where they're quite closely linked, whether it will be related or just happen to share a workplace. But mate, I like that a lot. Right, so coaching realities here now. What has anything changed now that you've moved to thinking actually no, these are the people I really want to work with? Day to day, have you found anything's changed, or is your mindset different and how you're approaching your work with clients?
Yeah, I'd say mindset is hugely different. Not hugely, but there's certain areas that we won't worry about pushing anymore. So like optimization doesn't really become a thing as much anymore. Like we can delve into that, but there's not as much of a need. A lot more of your education will change. So rather than me now, like I said to you, I went through the entire RP series. I've read 3DMJ's like programming manual. I've read multiple kind of programming, like exercise physiology books. And you get to a level of that where you go, I don't think investing in this is going to help me anymore with these kind of people. So currently I'm just going through an adherence lecture, like a dietary adherence lecture. And all of a sudden you start to shift over much more into kind of like psychology. And I think that's where you are getting into. You'll see that my content will usually be a reflection of where I'm at with my education. So at the moment, it'll be delving a lot more into psychology, philosophy, those kind of things that help you to understand people and help you to portray ideas to people that they can then kind of tangibly pick up, like ideas that actually make sense to them, rather than just talking to them some whimsical thing. So from there, that's definitely changed. Education routes changed. I would say what I press as important to my clients is now there's a lot more, let's make sure that we're doing things that make you happy as a person. Let's do things because inadvertently this is going to lend itself to you getting better results in the gym anyway. You're going to be more adherent to your program. You're going to be more adherent to your dietary program. You're going to find it easier to train harder because you're less kind of stressed and beat up from everyday life. Whereas again, like with the physique side of things, those variables don't really matter. You could talk to someone in the physique side, they do matter, but they could be absolutely unslept, battered, and they will still come into the gym and give it their all because they absolutely have to. So those sort of things have changed a little bit. I think that'd be the biggest variables.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so a couple of things there. So like the adherence you mentioned, actually at some point I was going to make earlier on about when we were talking about people who have great physiques but not much education, like it's a priority to them, and they'll make, it is the most important thing. They work out, and like you can not out train a bad program, but it's one of the most important variables, and I am all for trying to optimize your program design, is that your effort. So even the most perfect program, if you don't put the effort in, isn't going to get results. And so with those people who are highly motivated, they can outwork poor programming. But with people that you're describing there, I thought it was interesting. You talk about adherence, that if you can get them to enjoy the process and invest in it gradually, that probably has a positive impact on their effort levels, and then therefore the effectiveness of each rep, set, workout stacks up. And then again, that's that positive thing. One of the most important things for motivation is achievement. And if you achieve something, you're kind of motivated to do it, go more, and it's just up and up and up.
Well, on that as well, I think the idea of like education into how to make ideas easily accessible for multiple people is so important, because you could be standing there with general gym population person, they don't really understand why it's important to push themselves as hard as possible on this set, because obviously we need to render into some kind of like change adaptation level of this actual individual set. And unless you can come up with a concept of how to describe it to them and make them understand how this is going to probably make a difference, they're probably not going to do it going forward, because who wants to? It's a little bit going to the gym and absolutely destroy yourself. So coming up with that kind of stuff, being able to push that level of understanding onto people, therefore starts to change their thoughts and their own kind of philosophy on training. And they're like, right, I know I need to go here and do this. So rather than doing 9 sets of kind of a 5 RIR or a 5 RPE, they're now coming into the gym and they're like, right, even if I get 2 out, but I kind of push this to a good level, I'm going to probably be in a pretty decent place. And then they're going to get an endorphins rush from it anyway. And then they're going to want to train more and they get more results from it. And like you said, that then picks up momentum.
Yeah, brilliant. I think the education and the way you're thinking and describing is more training physiology knowledge really what I need. I think it shows good self-awareness, but it's also something that I think every coach should be aware of, because by and large, unless you're working with really elite people, your training knowledge, you should be able to get that to a pretty decent standard. Now, again, you can go higher and higher, and there will be benefits, but it may not be early doors. I think just getting some general understanding of training principles is vital. But then, what for your business, for having retaining clients, getting results with clients, but then it is that ability to a bit of psychology, bit of how can I articulate, this is stealing a quote from a previous guest, but how can I think science, speak client?
That's good.
And then, exactly. And it's not mine, but Michael Goulden, who I don't know if you're aware of RTS.
Yeah.
And Integra. That's his line. I assume it's his, or either that or he ripped it off someone else. but I think it's a brilliant one to have at the front of your mind when you're speaking to a client, because otherwise you learn these exciting new things, training, and it's exciting to you, but they could care less. Just how does this help me, and get that across as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, talking of that, I heard a quote, and this is something that stuck out to me. I think you hear quotes sometimes and they kind of lodge themselves in your brain and you're like, that makes a lot of sense. And I heard it from, I think it was Jacob Skepis at JPS. JPS?
Yeah.
So he said, obviously, when you first enter into the PT world, and I could kind of see this the same as when you first get a client and you're educating them, you first off work on width of knowledge, and then you end up going into depth of knowledge on an area that maybe they enjoy or maybe you enjoy. But first off, get a large pool of knowledge so you understand psychology, you understand nutrition, you understand adherence, you understand all these matters, and then you can go a little bit deeper before it really matters to know optimal joint forces or stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, another sort of visual that works for me with that is like the broader the base, the higher the peak can be. And then you can go in really deep on one area and you make that your thing. You are the go-to guy on that area.
A second and start writing all these quotes down.
And,
post.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. There's Instagram taking care of posts for the next month. Nailed it. There we go. Knew it was going to be productive for that. There we go. Anyone who follows you on Instagram now knows what's coming. They'll be like, I've seen this.
I won't repost this video.
Exactly. Not interested in this. Yeah, no, I mean, so JPS, again, they have some really good stuff, and I like the way they think about things. And I think that, stealing something from them, I think they almost had like the journey of a PT across his career in terms of, well, his or her career, but how they're looking, what areas they're looking at. And I think they mapped it out like the early days, the sort of basic physiology and training principles. And then, at some point, as much as I'm not really a big fan of it, marketing is going to be an element that you're going to need to understand, as well as psychology and motivational, and then considering yourself as a teacher and a coach, not just a trainer. You're not just there counting sets and reps. As a person, you're trying to get a result out of, and that involves elements of both teaching and coaching, and bringing all of those facets together. And that's what's going to really make you a good coach. And I suppose, as you said, when you were like, this is what I need. Being aware that, am I doing this course for me because it interests me, or am I doing this course because it's going to help my clients because I'm going to have something to take away and give to them?
Well, I think it's really interesting on the sales front as well, because I've never enjoyed sales or marketing. And since obviously the launch of Kraft Coaching, I've thought, right, well, I need to actually pick this up because this is something that we definitely got to work on. And I've started to realize that I don't necessarily, I've always hated the kind of sales marketing side because I've always seen it as a little bit sleazy. And this is something that I talked to Andrew about, that we was talking off, Andrew Coates, who I use as like a mentor. And he was talking to us about like, look, there's nothing wrong with obviously wanting to make a good living, but there's also nothing wrong with the fact that if you can reach more people through good marketing or good whatever, even if you're not trying to sell them anything, like at the moment, I have nothing tangible to sell. I don't have coaching spaces or anything like that. So there's nothing to trade them up to. But the fact you can reach more people and help educate them, that's still an amazing thing. And that is one thing we have to kind of almost take away from the topless influencer kind of crowd sometimes, is that they do an absolutely unreal job of marketing themselves because they are literally everywhere. So yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of side of things to go into.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Well, I think part of it's being British. So it seems like quite a lot of us, like we just like, you mentioned sales and it has a really negative connotation here, and I'm the same. And you're like, oh, sales, like that's why I love getting a referral, because they're sold before they arrive. It's basically just like, nice to meet you, like let's talk about your goals, and they've had that third party endorsement. They've made the decision. Brilliant. I don't have to feel like I'm selling anything. I can just help them. And like, generalization, North Americans, like, especially in the US, they don't see it that way, but they see it, I've got something of value, and obviously, like, if I don't help, if I don't make you aware of this, then I'm doing you a disservice. And I think that's kind of also a perfectly valid one, but I think it's so ingrained for whatever, like, our culture we've grown up with. Like, no one thinks selling something's a good thing. Like, it's madness.
Do you notice though, like, you only have to go to another country and you notice how, like, obviously I'm British, but you notice how prudish British people are. Like, you notice how reserved we are and like kind of quiet. You talk to an American person and you're like, God, like we are so subdued. Like an American listening to this right now and he'd be basically asleep. This would be nighttime listening. So,
it's like the equivalent of whale music for them, just relaxing.
He's chilling. It's white noise. He's not heard a word. Just asleep.
They just heard sell. Oh, you got something to sell? Oh no, you haven't. Oh, okay. It's so funny. Again, it's one of the things though. It's great about the internet is you can get exposed to those different mindsets, those different thought processes, different cultures. That bit easier. I mean, nothing beats traveling and going to these places, but being able to see how different people approach things and how their value system and stuff that you've almost been brought up to think, well, that's a bad thing. Like sleazy, I think, is the word that most Brits would probably associate with sales. I bet it's not the word that most Americans would associate with it.
You just think second-hand cars, don't you? Second-hand cars is you always
someone selling you crap as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Someone you ripping you off, just what you think. You think straight.
Someone's trying to rip. We've got another quote here again, but like. I think this is Paul Moore, but it was like, you can only sell shit once. And that helped me as well, because I was like, okay, well, if you believe that this is a worthwhile service, don't be afraid to sell it, because like people will come back and get it again and they'll tell people good things. If, however, like, I'm selling them something rubbish, well, yeah, that's when it's sleazy.
Well, there was, have you ever read The Practice by Seth Godin?
No, I haven't actually.
It's very, very like interesting book to read, but basically the whole way through it, he just says like, if you've got something that's good and it can help a lot of people, you'll basically be doing them a disservice not to be actually kind of selling it or making sure that you're doing the work or making sure that you're completing on the tasks that you need to be doing. And again, it's just these things that you kind of like look at and you start going, why do I think it's sleazy? And then you realize it's just an age-old thing that you've always thought, and there's no real tangible reason for it. And you're like, do I think my product's good? I think my product's good. Should I be helping people with it? I probably should be helping people with it. Okay, maybe actually sales is an okay thing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it's something, it's a gradual process as well, because you been beaten over the head with it for so many years. It's like, I think the other thing, if you saw a guy in like London, okay, with a Ferrari, the reaction of most Brits would be flash bastard. Like it wouldn't. Again, I bet in America they'd be like, oh wow, awesome car, mate. Like and like congratulating. Like, how did you get that? That's fantastic. Like and it's just that different mindset. So yeah, I just think it's funny.
We'd still be like, if he pulled up in the car, we'd be like, "You're right, mate. Oh, that's a lovely car."
We'd be thinking, "What a dick." But we'd be going, oh, hey, yeah, like, nice car, mate, nice car.
It's like when your dinner comes out and it's cold, and you're like, there you go. You're like, yes, it's brilliant. Thank you very much.
yeah. We could definitely learn from not just being so polite and trying to sort of placate people. But right, Stephen, I've really enjoyed the chat, but I know you're busy today, and we are sort of running up on time. So I've got a few quick fire questions for you, and then a couple more to wrap things up. So. These not training related in the slightest, and you can see I'm quite food focused. So, is it pizza or burger?
Pizza, definitely.
Chocolate or peanut butter?
Chocolate.
Beach holiday or city break?
Beach holiday.
Steak, rare or well done?
Rare.
Egg, scrambled or poached?
I like it. You give me a nod sometimes. I got that one.
You know when you got it right.
Poached.
So it's the only one I have a really strong feeling about is the steak one. That's where you get a nod. Everything else, I'm like, yeah, I get that. That's like, it could be either or. If you say well done, I'm just like, oh, come on now. That is definitely the wrong answer.
And Robinson's going to come out in a second and judge me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's some witty put down delivered from her. All right. So now, tell me something about yourself that people probably don't already know, and it can't be that you used to work at a train station because we've given that away.
Oh, bloody hell. Before that, I used to work in the co-op since I was about 16. So I worked in the co-op from 16 to 21. It started off as a weekend job, and then I quickly realised I didn't have any other job, and I was enjoying drinking on the weekends too much, and it just stayed as my job for far too.
There we go. And then we're looking forward to the best-selling book, like my journey from co-op to billionaire or whatever we go with. Okay, so final question from me before you have a chance just to let people know a bit more about where they can find you is, if I could interview anyone in the world, I've got access to this amazing address book. Who should I interview next?
Do you know what? I can never ever pronounce his name, but this was one of the best books I've read this year. So the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So Naval Ravikant.
Okay, I'll note that down.
He's an entrepreneur, like businessman, but when you can just tell someone's very, very intelligent. And he started diving into philosophy, psychology, social sciences, that kind of thing. The book is brilliant. His mindset on stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, I'd go with him. Your fitness crowd won't be that interested, but I'll listen. So
we've got one listener who will be on the edge of their seat.
I'll repost it everywhere.
Hang on every word. Right, that's it. We'll hold you to that. All right, Steve, been brilliant chatting. Please take a moment now just to let everyone know a little bit more about where they can find out about you, the work you guys do.
Perfect. So, like I say, we just started up a coaching company called Kraft Coaching. We will have a website coming very soon. At the moment, it is not out, but when it is, it'll be craftcoaching.co.uk. At the moment, you can find me, Steve at Kraft Coaching on Instagram. Actually, one second. I'm just going to quickly check that because I've literally changed it in the last few days.
While you're doing that, let me just make people aware it's Kraft with a K. As well, so they're not going to the wrong place. But we will stick the links in the show notes as well, so people can find their way that way.
Instagram's the best place to find me. Feel free to follow, hit me with any questions. I love having a chat with people in DMs. It's absolutely fine. I don't charge you, don't worry. When I was talking about sales, I've got nothing to sell you, so it'll just be a chat for us.
Cool. All right, Steve. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today, mate. Really, really good episode. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great talking to you, Tom.
That wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you heard and took value from it, please do me a favour by heading to iTunes right now, subscribing to the show and leaving a review. Positive reviews, like 5 stars, hint hint, really help the ranking of the show and will help us to spread the word and keep getting top class guests on. Make sure to follow Breaking Muscle on social media and me at Tom McCormick, that's TOMMACCORMICK on Instagram. Bye for now, and I'm looking forward to catching you on the next episode of the Breaking Muscle podcast.